thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. It's good to be here today. And there's a story many of you have heard. By the way, I'm nowhere close to 189.5 pounds. I got about a little less than half that much. was mine. It was quite an effort. And I told this story enough. I normally don't tell it anymore. I've told it so often, but since you brought it up weight, I'll tell it again, even though most of you have probably heard it. Just before I lost all the weight, when I was like the biggest I'd ever been in my life. And my wife, Lorraine, was still mayor out of Odessa. And one day I went to Whataburger in Odessa, and I ordered my usual. And I could really eat. My usual was 2 triple triples, 2 large fries, bartending rings, 2 apple pies, and no chocolate shake. Diet Coke. Anyway, there was a little boy behind me in line there one day when I placed this order with his dad. And he's one of those little chatterboxes he couldn't shut up, maybe 5 or 6 years old. I don't know. He looks up at his dad and he says, "Daddy, is he really going to eat all that?" The little man's face turns red. And he says, "Son, it's the man's business what he's leaving alone." So then he whispers, but it's one of those concrete floors with the weird acoustics. You can hear him, "Daddy, is he really going to eat all that?" And at this point, the man, she's looking at me, he's embarrassed. He says, "Son, please. That's Dr. Perryman. He's the mayor's husband. He's on the radios and the paper. Please, please, be quiet." Well, I was about that time. I was wearing a digital pager, which was our technology back then. This was about 1996, and just at that moment it went off. And it was beep, beep, beep. The boy said, "Watch out, Daddy, he's backing out." True story. I'll try not to back up too much today. I have to tell you, though, when I started losing weight, I was 43. And it took up exercise for the first time in my life. That's a great time to do that. It really is about 43. Because all my friends who had been jocks all their lives, by the time they were at that age, they had a bad back or a bad knee or shoulder or elbow or something. And I had virgin muscles. They'd never been used. I was ready to go. I was asked to try to explain this wild and crazy economy we have right now. Maybe still about healthcare, and then in Q&A I'll talk about anything else you want to talk about. So I'll just kind of jump around and do those two things. But I think a little bit differently today than I sometimes do. To try to give you a sense of the economy, where we're going, and some sense of where we've been very recently and that sort of thing. I could spend an hour on the mess we got ourselves into, but fortunately now I think we're in a position where we look ahead more than look back. A little bit differently today, though. How many of you at some point in your life, either out of high school, college, rehab, or something, took an economics class? Most of you, I'm sorry. Well, you probably found it to be a little boring. I mean, it's all right, you do cards, we're supposed to be boring. And so you probably found it a bit boring. And even if you happen to like it, you probably found a chapter on national income accounting, where we explain to you how we make up all these numbers. You probably found that to be one of the more boring hours of your life. So what I thought I'd do today is repeat that for you. But hopefully with a little bit different spin. Because I think if you kind of break down some of these accounts and what they mean, you'll start to see kind of where we're going and that sort of thing. And it's very good to be giving this speech right here in this area, which is ranked in the top 2, 3, 4, 5 in about 10 different ratings right now, great places to be. And so obviously everybody felt this, nobody got to sit it out, but obviously this area has done quite well and has a very good future. But to kind of start with it nationally, this time last year and maybe a year 14, 15 months ago, we were in pretty bad shape. I mean, it was scary. If you stop and think about it, the financial system was really teetering on the edge. I'm one of the many hats I wear as an advisor to the Joint Economic Committee, and another was an advisor to the Fed. So I was in the middle of some of these meetings and stuff, and I mean, it was absolutely scary where we found ourselves at that point in time. And we've come a long way since then. I mean, if you stop and think about it, there were a couple of quarters back there where the gross domestic product went down 5 or 6%. Now that's on an annual basis, so it's not quite as bad as it sounds. But if you do it for 3 or 4 quarters, it's pretty much a year, If you stop and think about it, whether you want to start in 1789 when we got the Constitution together, or in the 1600s when folks got to Virginia and Massachusetts, take your pick. We've been here a long time. And in all that time, we got our gross domestic product to where it is now. The amount of stuff we make, we got it to where it is now. When that drops 5% in just a few months, that's pretty serious. That's a very, very serious situation. And finally, in the third quarter of last year, we started growing again in terms of gross domestic know we grew in the first quarter of this year. So we've got 3 quarters now getting some legs back into this recovery. But if you stop and look at how we grew in all those things after all this decline, it really gives you some insights into what we can expect for the next couple of years. So I'm going to take you through all 3 of those quarters fairly briefly and what caused the gross domestic product to go up in those quarters. The first one is the third quarter of last year. After 4 straight quarters of going down, we finally went up. The first report said we went up 3.5%. Then they revised the numbers and they get a little more data and they said 2.8%. They got a little more data and they said 2.2%. The good news is they don't revise it again. Because we were not going in a good direction there. And then and that was in the third quarter of last year, so basically last fall. The economy, and this is where the old national income accounts and data lectures come in. The economy basically, the gross domestic product is all the stuff we make. And stuff is goods and services. I mean, folks who work in a hospital are making stuff just like folks who work in a factory are making stuff in the way we count it. And basically, one way we count it, the most common way we count it, is add up all the stuff that people buy. And there are several groups of people that buy stuff. Consumers buy stuff. We have something called investment, and that's not like stocks and bonds. That's like plant, equipment, that sort of thing. Physical stuff, mostly business spending. Then the government buys stuff. And then people who live in other countries buy stuff from us. If you add all that up, you get all the stuff that's bought over here. Well, some of that was made somewhere else. Consumers buy stuff that was made in China or wherever. So we have to subtract that out. That's imports. So you do that and you come up with the amount of stuff that we actually make. Well, in the second quarter, when we had that 2.2, or third quarter, we had that 2.2% growth rate, 2% of it was consumption. Okay, so of almost all of it, 90% of it was consumption. 1.5% of it was cars. Anybody know what's going on in the third quarter? Cash for clunkers. Cash for clunkers in the third quarter got people out to buy cars. Got a lot of people out to buy cars, and that was 70% of the growth we saw in that quarter was because people were buying cars. Now, the cash for clunkers caused 2 things to happen. Okay? One of them was that some folks said, hey, I wasn't even thinking about buying a car, but with that kind of deal, I'm going to go ahead and get me a new car. A lot of other folks said, I'm going to have to do something with this around the trap for the next 6 or 8 months anyway. I just want to go ahead and do it now and take advantage of this deal. So some of this was new consumption that might not have occurred otherwise for several years. Some of it was just kind of cramming what would have normally been 2 or 3 quarters of car sales into 1 quarter. Any car dealers out here? I just want to check to see if you got your money yet. I understand most of them got paid by now, but it took a while. But anyway, so a huge part of it was consumer spending on cars. Now, that turned out to be a good thing and for a couple of other reasons. It kind of convinced consumers they could leave the house and start spending money again. And we had a halfway decent Christmas season with consumers. And consumers have continued to spend into this year. Now, but what I can tell you is consumers can't give us an all-out economic boom forever. They only gave us a little bit of the growth in the fourth quarter, a fair amount in the first quarter. But the first quarter ended up being about 3.2% on the first numbers. We like to have 5 or 6%, something like that. The 3% is about all they can push and support right now. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the unemployment rate right now is in round numbers 10%. It's 9.9 at this point. But if you add in all the folks who have given up working and given up looking for work because they can't find a job, they don't get counted technically to be unemployed in the way we count numbers. You have to be looking for work. You folks who work for it, you know that. You got to be looking for work. Take out all those folks that quit looking. And then you take out all those folks who are called underemployed. And that is they have a degree, they have a great skill, they had a great job, they lost a great job, and now they're doing something to put bread on.